Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I have been studying relationships for over 20 years as a couples therapist, a professor, an award-winning author, and as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Now, I'm inviting you into this space each week as I dig into some of the toughest and most fascinating relational dilemmas of our time. If you want to discover how to create vibrant and loving relationships in your own life, you have come to the right place. This is Reimagining Love. Hi there. Welcome back to Reimagining Love. In the helping professions, our goal as therapists, psychologists, coaches, counselors is all about helping folks lead better, happier, more meaningful lives. And the work of building a life we love is deep and it's long-term. But along the way, there are also small and simple gems of wisdom that can pack a big punch, leading to aha moments, serving as reference points, and creating meaningful shifts. Gretchen Rubin's new book, Secrets of Adulthood, Simple Truths for Our Complex Lives, is full of aphorisms that present those kinds of helpful, concise ideas. And I'm very excited to have her on the show today to talk about them. Gretchen is a renowned happiness expert, and she's known for her ability to convey complex ideas, from science to literature to stories from her own life, with levity and clarity. And she's the author of many New York Times bestselling books, such as The Happiness Project, Better Than Before, The Four Tendencies, and Life in Five Senses. She's also the host of the popular podcast, Happier, with Gretchen Rubin, which helps people track their happiness-boosting habits. I loved kicking the conversation off with a discussion about her beautiful reframe of the empty nest phase to the open door phase, for all the parents out there whose kids are growing up and moving out. And then she and I use some of the aphorisms from her new book to explore so many important themes: the tension between self-acceptance and wanting to grow, balancing duty and desire in our relationships, and even how to make decisions about what to spend money on and what to invest in. These aphorisms would be wonderful conversation openers for you in your life and may even inspire you to write some aphorisms of your own. I loved having this conversation with Gretchen, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. Gretchen, it is wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Yes. So I am very excited to talk about all of your work, your new book. I want to talk a little bit about not empty nesting, but the open door. So I've got a lot of places I want to go with you, but I want to start by asking you the question that I ask all of our guests. Are you ready for it?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Gretchen, how are you reimagining love in one of your important relationships these days?
Well, you mentioned it. So, right, I am in the open door phase, which is my rebrand of the empty nest phase, because I think open door sounds much more inviting and exciting. And there's more hospitality and opportunity than empty nest, which can sound a little bereft and abandoned. So I'm rethinking my relationship with my younger daughter, who's the one who has left. But it also changes my relationship with my husband. We just had a big milestone anniversary. And so I have two relationships that are being reconsidered now.
I remember our conversation at Terry Cole's launch party in New York a few months ago. And that's why I think you were working on the Atlantic piece, which we're going to for sure put in the show notes. It's a beautiful, really beautiful piece.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I think a lot of people shared my desire to have a different metaphor for the empty nest phase. Some people call it free bird.
We are also in the early open door stage. And when our daughter left for college, a very dear friend of mine was like, Allie, we're not calling it the empty nest. We're freebirding. And I remember how invalidating it felt. It felt flippant and it didn't feel like it captured what for me at that moment was primarily in the driver's seat, which was grief, grief and just like not knowing who I was, what I was about. It was, it was so early. And so the open door, I think that your rebrand really captures like something that feels so much more permission giving and gentle. And so what I'm hearing you say is that that is inviting you to reimagine your relationship, not just with your adult daughter, but also with your husband.
Yes, exactly. Yep. It's all changing.
I just listened to the episode that you and your sister had done with your daughter, and where she was offering some advice on your podcast. And it was beautiful. And one thing that she had said had really stood out to me, which she was talking to you both, which is so sweet. She gets to talk to her mom and her auntie about some of the like frenetic energy around friendships.
Frantic friendship making. Yeah.
Because the idea is like you're in college and these are the people, these are gonna be your people and your bridesmaids and you're gonna know them forever. And that it's too much pressure. It's too much pressure for them when they're, as parents, we're going through this massive identity shift, but they are also going through a massive identity shift and learning how to adult, and be on their own to also feel like they've got to be finding the right friends and making the right relationships right now. It's way too much pressure. So what has it been like for you to kind of coach her from the sidelines as she finds her way?
Well, one thing is my daughter took a gap year, and I think that was really helpful because she's pretty high strung. She would say that herself. And one thing that I've noticed is just with more kind of experience and maturity, she's been a lot better able to kind of talk herself into a calmer place. She has more perspective on kind of all the drama that people are getting into. So she feels it, but I think she's able to manage it a lot better than she would have, say, a year ago, or certainly, 2 years ago when she was in high school, like as a junior. And so that's been really fun to see. One thing I told my daughter about, and I think this is really good for adults to think of too, is that there's research that suggests that when you're in the first 3 weeks of kind of an experience where everyone is new, like you're on a cruise ship or you've signed up for like a 3-day seminar or something, at the beginning, people have a kind of social openness where they're very willing to engage. You can kind of sit next to a stranger and just strike up a conversation, and that feels totally appropriate. But then the window closes. And so I said to my daughter, there's kind of this easiness, and maybe it's kind of frantic, but at the beginning, you really can kind of engage with people in this, and it doesn't seem cringy. But I said, don't take it for granted that that will last forever because it will start to close. People will form friendships, groups will form, and it will sort of take on more of what we would associate with just like kind of normal social engagement. So it's like really take advantage of that beginning period because there is a special quality to that. And I think we've all experienced that as adults as well. The beginning is different.
Yeah, and it's like this both and of how do you stay open, engaged, proactive without slipping into frenetic, desperate, grabby. So it's like this like sweet spot between those energies. There's a line in the article where you wrote, I want my daughters to know that they are essential to my happiness and that my happiness does not depend on them. My world feels both smaller and bigger. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
It's just like you said, it's both and. I think a lot of times, because I study happiness, I realize that a lot of times two things are true at the same time. There's sort of a tension that never can be resolved. Like we want to accept ourselves and also expect more from ourselves. And I think sometimes people are like, you're only as happy as your least happy child, and my children are my whole world, and they have to know that I put them first. And that's true. But at the same time, that's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. Like, my mom can only be happy if I'm happy. That's a burden. And so I also want my children to know I'm happy all by myself. Like, you don't have to worry about my happiness. There's this wonderful line. Bob Dylan wrote this extraordinary memoir called Chronicles, Volume 1. And he said that one of the things he loved about his wife is that she didn't depend on him or anyone else for her happiness. She had her own built in happiness. And so I think we want our children to feel like I don't have to take care of my parent. I don't have to worry about my parent. And I feel this way about my own mother. I know that I'm so important to my mother and she would drop everything and come running. But my mother is perfectly happy and doing all kinds of things. She's not dependent on me. She's got her own built-in happiness. And so I think both are true.
That is like such a vital in the parent-child relationship, it's such a vital both and to really, yeah, because to deny your kid that they are an essential element of your happiness is to like that's not accurate either because our kids feel how important they are to us. So we can't shrink that. But the other piece is you're not in charge of my happiness. And I've got lots of sources.
And then smaller and bigger because, it is funny, like there's less energy in the house. Like every person in a group brings their energy, brings their desires, their demands, their quirks, and that's exciting. But it's also draining and it's fun to have them there. And it's also kind of nice to have them gone. And so it's like both things are true. There's a lot more things that I can do because I have like more freedom and time and energy. Then there's fewer things because I'm not drawn into things through her. So it is, both things can be true. And I realized that part of the answer was like not to try to decide which was the right way to think about it and just to realize both ways are the right way to think about it. Both can be true, even though they are seem to be in opposition.
Yes. And then I think when there's a couple, it's like rather than, what couple therapists call like sort of splitting the ambivalence, where one person is carrying all of the life is bigger and the other one is carrying all of the life is smaller. It's like, how does each partner kind of visit, both facets of the experience so that the couple doesn't get polarized?
Well, you taught me that term, and I think it's incredibly illuminating because I think one person expresses sorrow and loss, and the other one's like, "It's not so bad. Look on the bright side. This is what we always wanted." And then the other person says, "But how does this not back up on you? Why don't you care? Everything life we had is lost." And so they sort of polarize each other instead of saying like, "It is sad." But it's also there's good things. And like I think it can be hard to be in that mixed up place, and sometimes it just feels easier to stake out your ground and just kind of have that sort of clarity. And then I think sometimes people feel like they shouldn't feel the way they feel for one way or another. They're too sad, they're not sad enough.
That's like that Buddhist first arrow, second arrow. The first arrow is the feeling you have, and the second arrow is all the stuff you say to yourself about that feeling's not okay. And what did it? Yeah. So just to drop the second arrow, your feelings are just to be like, oh, there's sadness. Oh, there's a little bit of glimmer of hope there. Just to be, yeah, just to visit all the places, and none of them, to your point, none of them have to be the essential unifying truth of it. I love that, as like one of the world's most foremost experts on happiness, like that has been something you've come back to again and again is that part of the secret to happiness is letting lots of things be true, right? And that's been something that you then have brought into your experience of the open door, that you are letting more than one thing be true at a time for yourself.
Yes, yes. It makes things more complicated, but then I think it's you understand what you're going through better.
Okay, well, you have done it again. You've written us a book. You have had this illustrious career and you have just been so generous over so many years with resources through your podcast and your writing and everything that you create for us. And I'm really excited about this new one. The new one is called Secrets of Adulthood: Simple Truths for Our Complex Lives. Will you talk to us? This book is built around the aphorism. So remind us what an aphorism is and why it is so dear to you.
So an aphorism is like something that someone has said. So it's not a proverb like a stumble may prevent a fall. That's just folk wisdom. It's something that a person said. And usually with an aphorism, it's kind of an observation about human nature. And it tries to be sort of punchy and witty or, especially succinct or unexpected. So it's a very writerly form. And I got to it because in my own I love that kind of writing. And in my own work over time, I noticed that I was pushing myself to become more aphoristic, and which means like to have a big idea and say like, well, can I really challenge myself to distill it? Like accept yourself and also expect more from yourself. I can't tell you how long it took me to come up with that expression of that idea. Like it was like 4 pages long when I started, right? So it's a challenge. It's an intellectual challenge because I had to have the idea. It was a creative challenge because I had to find a way to express it in a succinct and interesting way. And then when I was writing Life in Five Senses, I really just got into the idea of the creativity of it, of just like how much fun it would be to create a book of aphorisms, because before I was just sort of doing them in my writing. And so then I started like really writing them down. And I have a giant collection of aphorisms from other people, some of whom are very closely associated with aphorisms like Montaigne. And then some that probably people don't associate with aphorisms like Warren Buffett or Andy Warhol. But it is a super fun form. And this is a book where it's called Secrets of Adulthood because I have just like thousands of aphorisms. And I thought, well, I have some that are just observations, like the tulip is an empty flower. I really believe that the tulip is an empty flower. I think that's kind of interesting, but it's sort of like, okay, so what? So I'm like, okay, where do you go with that? So Secrets of Adulthood are the aphorisms that I felt like were really lessons that I learned with time and experience that I wanted like my daughters to know, but just as much me, because I feel like I'm learning the same lesson over and over in life. And so this is one of the ways to kind of remind myself. Like one of my favorites is a quest is more fun than a jaunt. And that's like, it's more fun to visit the flea markets in Paris than to visit Paris. It's more fun to go to like a vintage shop looking for a globe than it is just to poke around. And so a quest is more fun than a jaunt. It's just a quest is more fun than a jaunt. It's more fun.
Because of the mission? You're like on a mission?
Yeah, you've just got a mission. You've got something to look for. Like you've got the thrill of the hunt. Like maybe you find just what you're looking for and that's exciting. And then other people are like, oh, good, let's look for a globe. And oh, they spotted one. And then they're so excited to show it to you. Or like there's just a sense of, some people might completely disagree. And that's part of what is fun about an aphorism is because they're very like concise. It's very easy to disagree. And that's like, write your own aphorism about why that is not true. And in fact, one of my aphorisms is the opposite of a profound truth is also true. So it's also probably a jaunt is more fun than a quest. And people may believe that too. That probably is true. So anyway, I just had it just so much fun, like writing them, polishing them, sifting through them, organizing them, collecting them from other writers. My favorite aphorist is kind of been lost to public attention. Her name is Marie von Ibn Eschenbach. She's an amazing aphorist. My favorite of hers is, you can sink so fast, you think that you're flying.
I love
wow, right?
Yeah, I was so fascinated in the book where you describe this idea that when you know for yourself as a writer, that when you can get succinct, you've got a kind of mastery. And I think that it really like led me to think about, so much of my writing these days is like different quantities for different audiences or different methods. What goes on social media versus what goes in a podcast episode. And I have conflated succinct with like somehow less valuable, that it's watered down. But I really got it. When I was reading that part of your book, I really got it. I was like, there is something about the succinct that then it's like a little offering you give to somebody else, and then they go and do what they need to do with it. And to your point about the debate about an aphorism, like I love that. I love the idea of an aphorism as a conversation opener because there's not a lot of intensity around an aphorism, and you just get to kind of stretch it and play with it and explore it and look at it from different angles with somebody. And in that conversation with somebody else around the aphorism, you're learning more about yourself. You're learning more about them. So I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. I can see the value of the succinct is not just about kind of, creating content for social media. There's something more meaningful and more important there. So I felt less resistance.
Oh, that's good. Right. No, it does feel like sometimes like this pressure to just reduce everything to, sound bites.
Soundbite.
Yeah. But then some of these things are very clarifying. Like we care for many people we don't particularly care for.
You've organized your book into 5 categories. There's cultivating ourselves, facing the perplexities of relationships, making things happen, confronting life's dilemmas, and then the simple secrets at the end. And I, of course, I let myself flip to the part about relationships, of course.
Yes, and that's why it's divided like that, because I think a lot of people, they're like, "I just wanna go straight to what I'm interested in." I'm like, I don't wanna read the other ones yet. Yeah.
Which was so great because then when I read the other ones, I was like, oh, there's good stuff for me here as well.
Mm.
So, but I
Good.
knew where I wanted to start. And that was the first one that I pulled. I was just like, okay, I'm going to pull a few of these and just explore
Good.
them
Oh,
with
I'm so
Gretchen.
curious to know which ones resonated with you.
Okay, well,
Okay,
good.
tell me.
Well, that's the first one. We care
Good.
for many people we don't particularly care for. And I've been thinking a lot about the blend of duty and desire in our different relationships, and how if we could call up any given relationship and we could sort of imagine for ourselves, what is the blend in that relationship of duty and desire? What is the blend in this relationship of duty and desire? And I think we're in a moment in our culture where we have this idea that all of our relationships should be totally driven by desire and duty's got no, I think we're skewed right now. So I really like this one. So tell me, what caught you about this one? We care for many people we don't particularly care for.
Well, another of the aphorisms is we meet people in families we would never meet
Love
otherwise.
that one.
So sometimes it's your family. Like maybe you don't particularly care for all of them, but you care for them because your family. Maybe you have an old friend who's turned out to be pretty crotchety or pretty querulous, and yet they're important to you because you go all the way back. An old, a coworker that you have deep ties to. Sometimes we have relationships that sort of transcend just enjoying hanging out together. And I think that you're right, that I think that there's this idea that, like, if it's not totally great every minute, then maybe it's just not worth maintaining. And I think there's tremendous value in these relationships.
Right. Like if this relationship isn't serving you, that's like a lot of the language we hear these days. And I'm like, but it's also about who we get to serve in our relationships. Like we get to be of service as well. And there is, to your point, there's so much for us to learn about those relationships. We learn about patience.
On that note, I have to say one of the things that kind of worries me as somebody who studies happiness is that a lot of times people are like, oh, it's the family you choose. And I'm like, but what about the people who don't get chosen? The people that automatically had a seat at the table before, but now people are leaving them out, and then because some people are not that popular, not that some people aren't the ones that get a million invitations to Thanksgiving dinner. And I love the family you choose. I think it's a beautiful idea, but I also think that there are people who could get left out, who in other times would be included. And I think about the value of having those folks be thought of too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes me think about when you and your family were considering getting a dog and you made not likening, I'm not making a human dog comparison here, but just that you had made a pro con list and then they were pretty well matched. And then you went for the aphorism, when in doubt, choose the bigger life. And it makes me think, when in doubt, choose the bigger table. Like just
Oh, what a beautiful twist to put on that.
mhm,
Yes.
like it is. I think there's more, I don't know. I know in my life when I think there's more pain in excluding than there is in including, There's pain in including because now you got a difficult person at your table.
Well, and I can't quote myself, but there is also an aphorism, or maybe it's a simple truth. It's a secret of adulthood that if someone is difficult, consider inviting an outsider, because many difficult people behave better in front of guests, like other out, so that's kind of a tip. If you've got a difficult family member, have a friend come too, and sometimes they'll be on their better behavior.
I love that. I was like, that is gold. That is gold. Yep. Okay, let's do this one. When in doubt about how to spend our time, money, or energy, spend it on relationships.
Well, you know this research better than I do, I'm sure, which is that if you're looking at the secret to happiness, probably the secret to happiness, it's relationships. It's strong relationships with other people. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel like we can confide. We need to be able to get support and give support, as we were just saying. We need to have enduring, intimate bonds. And so anytime you're thinking about, well, should I pay to go to the reunion? Or should I RSVP yes to that cocktail party? Or should I drag myself out of my home to go visit that friend who had a new baby? The answer is usually yes. If it's going to deepen or broaden your relationships, it's probably going to make you happier. And if that takes energy, if that takes time, if that takes money, it's probably a good investment.
I think it's so smart that you tied spending money, like that if it's about spending money, also to spend on relationship. I think there is in this consumer culture, I think we do think that it's the things that are going to make us happy, this amazing purse or car or whatever, or that the spending money is going to bring us the people that we think is going to make us happy. Spending money on things will bring us people who will make us happy. But really, the spending is on the trip with the friend or the visit to the friend. So that's, I think there we can make that bridge between even money and relationships.
Or I remember when my sister was still young and she finally had enough money to buy a dining room table. And she was like, oh my gosh, and I'm going to have people over all the time because like I have a table. And so that was a really good, on the one hand, you're like, it's a thing, but it was also an experience because it allowed her to like have hospitality. My sister's very social. And I mean, before that, it was literally like a cardboard box with a tablecloth on it. And so it was a big upgrade. So again, sometimes it's the line between experiences and things can sometimes be difficult, but you're exactly right. Think about, is this something that is going to let me engage with other people? Maybe I'll get a yoga mat and now I'm going to take a yoga class. And now I've got like a chance to meet some new people in a new town because I'm regularly taking this yoga class. And so you're signing up for the class, you're buying your mat, but really it's with the thought that, yeah, I'm getting yoga, but I'm also potentially finding a foothold in a new community.
That's money well spent.
Yes,
That's money well
exactly.
spent. Okay, well, we talked about your sister's table, so let's do this one. I love this one. It's better to invite friends over for takeout than not invite friends over for a home-cooked dinner.
Yes. Well, this is something that I remind myself of all the time.
Me too. I was like, okay, I need that one on my fridge.
Yes.
Yeah, go.
Yes. Well, and it's also the same thing. Like it's better to go for the 20-minute walk you do than the 3-mile run you don't do. Which is we're always much better like actually being realistic and actually following through with something that carries us towards our aim rather than having a fantasy self who does things much better, but then never ends up doing them. Yeah.
My fantasy self organizes like dinner parties with like really fancy recipes. And it's not who I am. And I don't think my story has always been, I can't cook or I don't cook well. But I think it's just that isn't my priority. Like I want to have friends over, but my priority is on making it happen rather than the food I would prepare necessarily to make that happen. But I've gotten tripped up in my head sometimes about like the way I should, there's like this sort of parallel world where I'm hosting in this way I imagine I should host. And I don't ever want perfect to be the enemy of
Yeah.
good.
I remember one time I was with my mother and we saw these like really wonderful cocktail linen napkins on sale. And my mother's like, oh my gosh, these are 60% off. Do you want them? And for a minute I was tempted. And then I was like, who am I kidding? Linen cocktail napkins? Like they terrify me. I would never be that kind of person. No, but you get sort of drawn into this idea. But then when you face the reality of like, well, what is it that you would do? You're like, well, maybe we'll get takeout or we'll get pizza or we'll have brunch. Brunch is a very good meal for people who are social but aren't like into the cooking part of it. Yeah, then it frees you up to think of other solutions rather than just kind of insisting like, well, I have to do it this way or not at all. Because if that way doesn't work for you, then you just won't do it.
It's a big invitation to somebody who's listening right now to like check in with yourself about what are the ways that your perfectionism or maybe some gendered ideas about who you're supposed to be or who you should be or however, like wherever those messages came from, are they part of what keeps you from extending invitations, inviting people over? And like, what might you do if you freed yourself up from that idea that hosting has to look a particular way? Because we're in this loneliness epidemic and it's like we don't need any more reasons to not make plans. Okay, I've got one more in the relationships section that I loved a bunch of them, but here's another one. Before declaring that something is superficial, unhealthy, inefficient, dangerous, disgusting, or immoral, we should consider maybe this just doesn't suit my tastes.
No, because so many things when you look at it, I'm like, that's just your preference. Like I wrote a book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, that's all about why outer order contributes to inner calm for most people. And I'm a person who likes a lot of order, but some people don't. Some people don't really care about it. And what I notice is that that a lot of kind of people who hold themselves out as experts will really say like, this is the best way. This is the right way. This is the way that will give you the most creativity. And then I'm like, no, there's no magic in making your bed. If you can find what you need, there's no problem if everything is out on the counter. These things only matter if they matter to you. But if they don't matter to you, you might say to yourself, why am I going to spend time making my bed if it doesn't matter to me? And you shouldn't.
Oh, it's fantastic. But that is, I love that you're sharing that in the sort of expert space. That is definitely a trap. It's also, I think it's also common just in the space between people that we take differences. I mean, I think culturally we take all kinds of differences and we make them into hierarchies. So let things just be differences. Don't turn it into a better, worse. So you could be different from somebody that you love very dearly, and you don't need to figure out which one of you is right and which one of you is wrong. It's just you have a taste for this and I don't have a taste for this.
Well, here's another one, morning people and night people. Research shows that this is largely genetically determined and a function of age. About 30% of people are night people, about 40% of people are morning people, and then everybody else is somewhere in the middle. But as a morning person, I will tell you, morning people will just say, well, it's better. It's more efficient. If something's important to you, you should get up early and do it. And I remember talking to somebody who's like, oh, for my exercise, I dance around my living room for 30 minutes to Beyonce every night at midnight. And for me, I wanted to be like, that doesn't make any sense. That's wrong. That'll keep you from going to sleep. You should do it earlier. And I'm like, who am I to say? It works for her. She enjoys it. She does it. It must not keep her from going to sleep because it's like it's part of her day. And why not? It doesn't work for me, but what's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing better. If it works for her, it's better for her. And yeah, you realize just so quickly we fall into you're more productive, you're more creative, you're more upright, you have more self-discipline. And a lot of times it's just like, not really. It's just people have different preferences.
Mm-hmm. And it does, I think about that with couples. I mean, it comes up all the time in couple therapy. I'm sure it is not hard to imagine. I think about my aunt and uncle. My aunt, like later when she was probably when she was menopausal, she like really became a night owl. And she like her time was like, she would go to sleep at 3 a.m. and then sleep until 11 or noon. And so her husband just kind of shifted himself to that schedule so he could be kind of on her rhythm with her. I thought, what a beautiful resolution to that problem, because it would have been very easy for him to plant his flag and say, this is not good and da-da-da. But he just was like, okay, I'll just, figure out how to ride your vibe. It was really so sweet. But that's couples. I think couples can get really locked into the better, worse, rather than asking the question of like, what scares me about this difference? Or what is the longing? Like, what do I worry is going to happen to us if we have this difference? Like, that's the more interesting conversation.
Well, and then on a more banal note, the incredible arguments about how to load a dishwasher. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
this is like, it's like, what can matter less? Or like, let's just look up what the experts say and settle this once and for all. But I mean, I have heard from so many people, my way is better, this way is better, don't take the time. It's like fit in every dish. I mean, it's just one of these things where if I do it my way. And if you do it your way, and the dishes get done, and that's fine.
Well, you had an aphorism for that. You said, generally speaking, when one person cares more about a path than the other person, you just go with that one. I think that is such a good rule of thumb. The person who cares more, because that is true. Like it's not just a difference of opinion, it's the intensity
Yes.
of the difference.
How much do you feel like Italian food? Because all things being equal, I would like to have Chinese. But if you're really, really, really in the mood for Italian, that's fine.
Oh,
Yes.
and I also love that layer of it, because I'm thinking like if I'm somebody who historically, like we just finished on my podcast this big series about family of origin roles. And one of the family of origin roles is like the easy one. Like you are the kid in the family who is like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So if you're an easy one in recovery and your partner says to you, how badly do you want Italian? What a beautiful chance to be like, actually, I really freaking want Italian. And then you get some accommodation. Like that's just so beautiful. Such a beautiful opportunity.
I heard a great technique if you've got a bunch of people like this together and they're sort of paralyzed. So it was a story on the Happier podcast. A listener wrote in. So she had 3 sisters and they were all the kind that would defer to each other, whatever. And so they were going to Disneyland and they were worried that nobody would get what they wanted because they were all wouldn't speak up. And so they each like anonymously wrote down their 5 preferences. And then they wrote down like, what is your must thing? Like, what is the thing that you feel like this is like the experience that you have to feel like you got your experience. So then they figured out what they were going to do, and they made sure they did each of the ones that was sort of the central experience of each person. And then they just added it up, and they're like, well, 3 people want to do this, so obviously we should do that. And then only 1 person wants to do that, so we'll put that at the bottom of the list and we'll get to it if we can. And it was just good because it was like, it gave everybody a framework for articulating their desires without making them feel, putting them in the spot, because sometimes people don't like to have the feeling like, well, I'm telling everybody what to do. They honestly don't like that feeling. And so this was a way, it's like where it's going to take away the onus of being the director. Now, of course, some people step into that role all too easily and they have no problem telling everybody what to do. And that's a problem as well. But I thought that was a good example where, like, let's look at ourselves and know how this can go and come up with a clever solution.
It's so clever. It's gamified. And so then they had
It's fun.
They had the fun of
Yes.
creating the system and who's going to tally the scores. And
Yes, exactly. And like,
uh-huh.
oh my gosh, it's how funny that all 3 of us have like a completely different, like, must do experience. Yeah, it's just, it turns it from being fraught into being fun.
And then you get the pride of, okay, now we're going to like sister one's, favorite activity. And you get like, you're so proud. Like, look at all of us like rallying around this thing that she really wanted to do.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a very ingenious solution to a kind of a tricky problem.
Yes. Okay, do this one because I love this one. Enthusiasm is a form of social courage. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to whip that one out next time we're at a family situation and there's dancing, because my family is my husband and our 2 kids are always like, can you just like make your dance moves smaller? And I'm like, no. And now I'm going to be like, Gretchen Rubin says, enthusiasm is a form of social courage.
Oh, that's good. I love that. What a great example. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot safer and easier to be very critical. And I think it's much bolder and riskier to be enthusiastic. And I think whenever I'm thinking about enthusiasm, I think about Julia Child, because Julia Child's just sheer enthusiasm for French cooking kind of transformed the world. And we still talk about her to this day because she just, nobody was talking about this. Nobody was studying it. Nobody thought it was interesting. And yet she swept everybody along with her enthusiasm.
It feels so fun to be near somebody who's enthusiastic. Like even like when you talk about Julia Child, like your face lights up, like it's fun to be near somebody who's enthusiastic. I mean, I guess, well, my family would say it's embarrassing sometimes, but that there is, yeah, like there's something. So I love the idea that it's courageous. It's courageous to invite that kind of energy into a space because you're inviting it forward.
And another thing I really like about enthusiasm is I think, so sometimes people talk about confidence, and confidence is really about controlling the way other people perceive you. So it's like acting confident. Well, you're acting in a way that you think will make other people think that you have confidence in yourself. So it's very kind of outer directed, but I feel like it's easier to be enthusiastic because I feel like when you have enthusiasm, you seem confident because enthusiasm implies like, this is what I stand behind. So it's a confident way to be, but it's outward. It seeks to bring people in. It wants to persuade. It wants you to join. It's joyful. It's energetic. There's something kind of goofy about it. And so I often think about like when I'm speaking, I don't think about, well, I want to seem confident to an audience. I'm like, I want to convey my enthusiasm for my subject, because that is like what I want people to tap into is like, this is so interesting. I want to learn more. I feel like I've got so much insight. That's better than like, I want to seem confident. I want to project expertise. That to me feels much more kind of claustrophobic. I'm a big fan of the quality of enthusiasm. And it is a form of social courage because you definitely put yourself out there with your enthusiasms and your big dancing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, I had never thought of that distinction in that way, but I so get it. I so get it. Gretchen, this has been so fantastic. Before I let you go, I'm going to pull one from the last section, which is the simple secrets section. And this is just like, I live by this one. It goes like this. If possible, have a challenging conversation while walking. Huge fan of the walk and talk. Huge fan of it. Why do you love it so much?
Because you're doing something, you don't have that intensity, you're side to side instead of face to face, which a lot of times makes people feel scrutinized or judged or kind of on the hook. If you've got kind of jittery energy that sometimes comes with a difficult conversation, it has a calm way to release. You have something to kind of distract you. You might share a moment that like takes you out of a tense moment. You're out in the sunshine, that tends to like boost energy, but just being in the sunshine. So it just makes it easier to have a tough conversation.
Totally, totally agree. I have lived by that one for a long time. Huge fan. Oh, Gretchen, I mean, as if anybody does not know how to find you, you are just such a treasure. But tell us, I mean, we've got links in the show notes about your brand new book, Secrets of Adulthood. But what else do you want to highlight for folks about getting to be near you?
Well, I have my podcast that you mentioned, Happier with Gretchen Rubin, where every week my co-host, who's also my sister, talk about ways to be happier, healthier, more productive, more creative. It's very practical, but a lot of fun. And then I'm all over social media at GretchenRubin.com. My website is GretchenRubin.com, where there's all kinds of quizzes and resources and articles about everything happiness and human nature related. And I love to connect with listeners and readers about subjects that are interesting. So hit me up in all the places, and I'd love to hear what people are thinking about.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with me. This was wonderful.
Thank you. I so enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Gretchen, for joining me today. If you liked one of the aphorisms that we highlighted, consider writing it down in your journal or pinning it up on your wall as a reminder today. For me, it's probably got to be, when in doubt, choose the bigger life, or a quest is more fun than a jaunt. If you want to check out Gretchen's book, as well as her Atlantic article about empty nesters, you're going to find those links in the show notes. Until next time, be well. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.